Добрий день, шановні пані і панове. Ми розпочинаємо нашу традиційну прес-конференцію, організовану спільно.
Let's start our conference that was made together Free Crimea, Народнyi Front, and Ukraine Crisis Media Center. It's our final annual conference for the Crimea, for our friends, for the activity of our project. What we managed to happen already, how many events did we make? We invited our friends to participate in our conference. We invited Georgiy Logvynskyi, MP, and Olexandr Iankovskiy. He's the head of TV and radio project Krym.Realii at the Radio Liberty and Black Sea TV and radio company also. Georgiy and Alexander were the key expert for us this year. Also, they were one of the key witnesses for us for our book. Yesterday we made some conclusion, and I'm very pleased that this book, Annexion Crimea Island, was one of the top 20 Ukrainian language bestsellers of the year. And we are selling it just for 3 months, so as you can understand, the result is rather serious. And of course, it's also the result that the Crimea topic became actual, because when we were writing this book, it was at the periphery of the interest, because I remember at the beginning of 2015, when all these press events just started, when last sociological project was made, requested by Free Crimea, there was JFK company, and the interest was weak at the very beginning, but as we can see, the events of the year in the world, in Ukraine, the situation in occupied Crimea changed at last, and started from the second half of 2015. Crimea became actual again, not just in Ukrainian politics, but also in international politics. It happened thanks to the active force of the MPs, such as Georgiy Logvynskyi, who made himself more than state service on Crimea issues. He was pushing a great number of the claims about the ship owners who went to the Crimea illegally. He also gave the invitation to the court to the MPs, to Mariani also. That was the guy who as a part of delegation crossed the border of the occupied Crimea. And also for Olexandr Iankovskiy, it was important year, because Olexandr Iankovskiy, together with other colleagues, launched at last first independent radio for Crimea that is on air every day now, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at the evening, but still it's one of the few free independent voices that can be heard in occupied Crimea. Now we will discuss the results of 1 year of our work. We will make some conclusions. Here you can see on the screen our team, that is the main members of the team. It was Roman Starchuk, he's an expert of Free Crimea, the journalist of the project Anna Makota, and project manager Katerina Pokrovska. Important events that happened during this year were: they start from December 2014. We started when we got grant from Canada government, Canada Fund for Local Initiatives. In 2 months, we had first presentation of big survey regarding Crimea. In February, we launched Free Crimea website, one of the main sites on Crimea topic. On 19th of February, we presented the first book, Black Book of Crimea Occupation, it is called. We presented it in Kyiv at the round table. Later it was presented also in Washington and Brussels. From May 2015, we started cooperating with Ukraine Crisis Media Center. where we have our press conferences on a regular basis. And starting from 1st of May to 15th of July, we were working on the book Annexions Crimea Island, Chronicles of Hybrid War. The book was finished and presented on 11th of September on Lviv Book Forum. We were there together with Olexandr Iankovskiy presenting this book. And today is a day when we come to some conclusions and our activities. During this year, we had 40 events, 24 out of them were press conferences in Ukraine Crisis Media Center also, starting from Hotel Ukraine and in the new premises of Ukraine Crisis Media Center. We had 4 press conferences abroad. We had 10 presentations of the book in Ukraine and 2 big round tables. Regarding our intellectual work, we prepared during this year 30 infographics, 2 interactive maps concerning the Crimea, 25 issues of fact book. It's weekly issue on situation in Crimea, militarization, breach of rights of people in Crimea, and we send it to all the ministries of foreign affairs of European Union, to the State Department of USA, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Canada, Australia, Japan, Turkey, and other countries. And we made 3 charity campaigns. Free Crimea Project helps Crimean House. This is a house where internally displaced persons from Crimea are living, and from Donbass as well. There are kids from Crimean Tatar families. All of them are orphans. We help them, and we will come to them for New Year as well. And we invited 117 experts to our events. 58 of them participated, and we got 49 refusals because I want to point your attention to this fact, because unfortunately we won't discuss only pleasant things today, and these refusals were from the officials as well. You can find the full list in our material, because it's important to know that, because together with active people, also these ones I mentioned in the beginning, there were people who didn't want to bear any responsibility, and we need to discuss them as well. And top 5 experts, people who participated in our events most often: Olexandr Iankovskiy, you can see him here. Andriy Shikun, he is the head of Crimea Center of Business and Culture Cooperation of Ukrainian House. Taras Zavgorodny, economist. Evgeny Andriuk, expert of Crimea Source Project. And Sergei Gramenko, Crimea history specialist on Crimea issues. These experts were participated in our events more often. And also we were working actively in information environment. Only on our Facebook page we have more than 15,000 followers. During this year we work actively on Russian social media, I mean ВКонтакте and Twitter. And now we will analyze the results of the year. We will talk about how Alexander and Georgiy remember this year, because I have a feeling that we had about 5 years during this year. So we will want to ask Georgiy Logvynskyi first. What does he think about it?
Thank you for this press conference. Thank you for what you do, and thanks to all the participants who who do their best to return Crimea. And when we fight for Crimea, it remains ours, and the struggle is a network that unites us. We should struggle for the territory, we should fight for the truth. And that's why our direction of work, that is very important, is to prevent the understanding of Crimea as a frozen conflict. And we should go, this way was provided by Russia, and this happened in Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Russia understands how world community can react. But due to such people as Taras and those advocates and experts who work every day to prevent these plans, and those documents that we see inside those documents and international documents, we understand that Russia didn't expect such national and international consequences after the annexation of Crimea. They thought that it will end at the level of small conflict. And today's result cannot be called satisfactory, because we will be satisfied only when the Crimea will be returned. But this is one of the main aspects. Ukraine, as a subject in the realia that are now in the world, cannot be the only counter actor against Russian Federation. Russia, with the help of oil dollars, can bribe politics and lobby its interests internationally. But it didn't happen. Sanctions are really strong, and the international community understands that Russia cannot be a good partner, and that they do not deliver their promises and their agreements. That's why they diversify their risks. What is the concept difference? If you have a strong partner that delivers gas, it's good. It's a plus, and you know that you work with someone and he delivers his promises. And at the same time, some partners in agrarian sector, Russia delivered some agricultural produce. Russia used this mechanism as a means for pressure, and they said that they would refuse some deals and contracts, and you will have some problems, so you should think twice. And this is economic traps, and Europe sees its interaction with Russia not as a partnership, but they try to undermine these traps. And we see the reaction of Turkey. Of course, the government of Turkey wants to develop its country economically, but they didn't want to keep silence. And maybe this was the last drop, but they acted very actively, and we believe that other countries won't be silent and will show how they what is their attitude towards Ukraine and Russia. So we believe that we are not alone in the struggle. The European community, the United States, they are with us. Also Japan, other countries, Israel, they are more neutral, but still. And we hope that the international community will support Ukraine with sanctions and also training investment. And this will be a further step for deoccupation of Crimea. And also we encounter the fact that a lot should be done, but Ukraine is too weak now to increase its influence. And we could arrest the property of Russian Federation in the United States, but at the international and diplomatic level, or the level of top officials, yes, they cannot deliver coal, or they can disrupt our energy balance. That's why they try to be more balanced, and I understand these processes. But I think that we should have more opportunities to act and strategies. And it's like a check game, and you can't forecast the result. If when you start your game, you can't forecast results, and we should be more optimistic, and we should act, and we will reach better results. And in countries that faced Russian aggression, we made 10 steps more than everyone else. We got the decision of European Court on Human Rights before the referendum in Crimea. We obtained it when our claim was provided, and we were able to file cases in other courts with complaints against Russia, and also the development of legislation allowed to bring to justice violators, and some guarantees of safety and security were created in order to stop aggression inside Crimea. Unfortunately, this is not done as a comprehensive system. Some actions are illegal, and many officials in Crimea, they act, and even in Russia, they say Crimea is not Russia. We don't want to work in Crimea because the rules are different. We don't want to take part in it because we are not sure that our property will be safe and that we can develop business there. That's why there are some achievements, and I would like to thank all those who are with us, and to address everyone. Join us, and we should find proper ways to strengthen sanctions, to support our citizens in Crimea, and to create the atmosphere when we will establish control in the nearest future. Olexandr Iankovskiy. 2015 is the year. That is the year of understanding what is going on with Crimea. And we have advantages and disadvantages in such a situation. And in Verkhovna Rada, there's unity called Crimea. But there are only 10 deputies in it. And there are even less deputies who are interested in this issue. Of course, sanctions are great from the side of the USA, but Ukraine joins the sanctions after the European Union, the United States. It's good that the EU introduced sanctions against Russia, but these sanctions are connected more with the situation in the east of Ukraine and not with Crimea. And it's very good that such a project, Free Crimea, created by Taras Berezovets, exists. And also there's a book on the annexation of Crimea. But they do not pay proper attention to the annexation of Crimea in the media. And what we can do as media, and what we do during these 2 years, and Taras Berezovets with his Free Crimea project, journalists from Crimea, they try to tell to other Ukrainians that they are that Crimea is Ukrainian territory, and some people were just forced to take Russian passport because it is impossible to live there without Russian passport. about pluses and minuses. And it's good that the state service on Crimea issue started its work. But the appointment of officials in this service was behind closed doors. But we don't know what the service now is doing. Maybe it's good that different strategies are written about the occupation, but we don't know what will be done by the state on a daily basis. And our task as a media, we should remind to our citizens that Crimea is Ukraine, and we should show the president, the prime minister, and the government that they shouldn't forget about Crimea, that this topic is very acute. And I support Mr. Logvynskyi that if this process that was started by Russia in February 2014, if we are supported by Europe, Canada, USA, Japan, and other civilized countries, this process will accelerate. And this is not another Cold War when socialist countries were behind iron curtains for 40 years. I think that the processes will accelerate, but we shouldn't come down and say that there's some secret plan, Anaconda, like in the Russian Federation, that the prices, oil prices will rise, and the Russian Federation will fall down, will be separated into different states. Dollar costs 25 hryvnias, and ruble costs and dollar costs 60. Dollar costs 70 rubles. But Ukraine should have officials, teachers, doctors. Ukraine should have different people who will come to Crimea and work there. So these are the main issues that I considered in 2015, and I think Taras and Georgiy support me, and I hope that next year that there were 49 officials that they should be ashamed of themselves, and every official in Ukraine should understand that no matter what they do, they should think about Crimea.
Thank you very much. We are ready for your questions. If you have any questions, raise your hand. I will come to you with the mic. While you are thinking, I will ask my question to Olexandr Iankovskiy. Regarding your analysis, information from Ukraine, is it needed in Crimea? Do we still have these threats, or most of the people forgot already that they were Ukrainians one day? Some part of people cut this threat even before the events of 2014, and living in Crimea with Ukrainian passports, they were watching Russian channels, they were interested what was going on in Russia. I was always surprised by this fact, but really now these people are at home. But many people are still interested in the events of Ukraine, but even more people are interested in real situation in Crimea. I can make this conclusion based on the site Krym.Realii, that is in the Kyiv, but it's one of the top 3 most popular Crimean sites. Higher than that, just governmental website. And it says that Crimean people really interested in what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in the world, and they interested in the alternative point of view to the events. Because if we read just Crimea mass media, we can see just positive information and how happy they are with Vladimir Putin and Sergei Aksyonov. For me, the site Crimea.Reality is one of the sites from which I start my morning, and our sites are usually in the top of the followers, because of course we understand that the people who read in Crimea, they are the citizens of Crimea who became internally displaced person. And the second place takes Simferopol, but now there are the attempts of blocking these resources time to time. Time to time they do it. Last week our site was hacked by Russian hackers, but we secured ourselves. Our site is located outside the Ukraine, and we could save it, because if it would be in Ukraine, the problem would be much more serious. And I have a question to Georgiy. You mentioned the strategy. You mentioned that this document can be long-term. The president told that in June, and he confirmed me 2 weeks ago in our meeting that the National Security Council will make the strategy during 2-3 months. But what should be included into this strategy? I'm not asking you about some secret issues, but in the time frame, what deadline and what other information we should make in the document, at least in the open part of the strategy. Taras, it's hard for me to comment personal promises of the president of Ukraine to you, and I have a questions to you. If he promised you that, now you are responsible for this document. That's exactly what he told me. If you ask for it, you will write it. But at the same time, I can say that really there are really many aspects are still uncovered. Every day we are creating some new project. For example, the issues of the cultural values of the museum objects that are still in Crimea, and they are not on the territory of Ukraine, and we can find them in the Museum of Germany, Switzerland, and we can do something with it and give sanctions against Russian museums. The same issues are in educational directions, where we should have some strategy. Do we accept diplomas or not? What action can lead to the breach of the human rights? And how we can struggle with the illegally created universities. There are issues we should describe, but we can see them in general complex. General strategy should be the same. What actions can we make? What feedback can we get? How do we minimize risks within normal reaction if we have coal supplies from DNR and LNR? We should understand clear that the cost of our coal independence has this price, and we can purchase these assets from Africa, from Israel, from some other country. We should have a roadmap of our actions. So we need to have the map of our reactions and feedbacks. And in complex, it is the research of all the spheres of activities and deeper point actions against our country. What does Alexander think about education? This issue is very painful. It's important. You know, from this year, Ukraine Ministry of Education stopped recognizing the diplomas of university located on the territory of annexed Crimea, and they proposed the following: if the citizen of Crimea with Crimean passport want to go to any university on the Ukrainian territory, 2 months before, he should go from there to fix to any educational facility. It will be his concern. Nobody will assist him in that. It should be their personal initiative. 16, 17 years old guy or girl should have some relatives or funds to rent an apartment, to approve it at their school, to pass all the Ukrainian exams, and only after them they have possibility to go to some Ukrainian universities. When I discussed it with Mr. Quid, he explained it logically that we understand, of course, how hard is the situation for them, but we can't recognize the diplomas that were issued in Crimea. And it's logical and right, but we created such a big problem because if in 2014 thousands of children could enter the educational facilities in Ukraine, but this year the figures are really ridiculous, something about 200. Can we make the solution to this problem? And what is more important here, the rights or the human rights or the law? The law told us that we don't recognize diplomas and that's it. I thought the laws should describe the rights and the relationships established in the state and to fix this right, not just to establish some new rights in absolute spherical vacuum. I saw information that about 400 kids entered universities this year, and it's really complicated because from the point of view of legislation, and the representative of legislation is next to me, the law was created that any documents issued on the territory of temporarily occupied Crimea are not recognized in Ukraine. It's clear that these documents won't be recognized, but we should understand Russian Federation in 2015 had mass information campaign to involve Crimean pupils into their universities. They said that about few thousand vacant seats are provided to Crimean pupils. And there were about 14,000 pupils in Crimea at all. What happens in Ukraine now? After graduating the school, and now for the second year already, they got just middle school certificate of the Russian sample. As far as I understand, in international practice, there is Namibia precedent when facts of the birth, of the marriage, of the divorce established in the documents of occupied authorities, and the system of recognition is the following: they recognize the fact, not the document itself. And now there are no representatives of Ukrainian authorities in Crimea, and it's not possible to prove this fact except for the documents issued by occupational authorities. So maybe we could do the same with the school certificates, because it's really important, because kids who come to Ukraine, it's their choice. They will study in Ukrainian universities even if they come back to Crimea after Ukrainian universities. They will bring Ukraine with them. And they will bring Ukraine to Crimea during university holidays. They'll be kind of peace ambassadors of Ukraine. But the situation is more complicated because these students who wanted to go to Ukrainian schools, maybe last year somebody had doubts that it wouldn't be serious, that it will be solved very soon. Many students from Crimea University couldn't transfer to Ukrainian university and went to the universities of Poland, Germany, Great Britain, and nobody asked them questions about their documents and what to do with that. But that is a question to the legislation. And regarding the comfort of distant work, for the time being, there is Ukrainian international school where you can get distant education. The parents who look at the perspective, even from the first classes of the school, they start fixing their children to this school, and kids in parallel way are studying in Russian school and in Ukrainian distance school. Of course, it's clear not everybody will be able to have this double load, but at least there are the most motivated kids who connect themselves to Ukraine. I want to add few words. Really, we have a problem. We know the problem. There are difficulties, but we should see from where we have these difficulties. Really, we had this way regarding documents, but there was a proposal to change any fact. There was a proposal to work. To recognize the fact, not the document itself. And we can find this problem inside the Ukrainian state that we can't solve. For example, purchase agreements, ownership transfer, facts connected to the heritage. All these issues are not simple, and educational issues as well are not simple. Because if, for example, we recognize the diplomacy in the universities, they could make some campaign for Ukrainian students that, for example, Ukrainian students can come to Russian universities for free. We will zombie you during this period of time, and then you can come back to Ukraine. And there was an issue in the interdepartment group on losses reimbursement in occupied Crimea, and there is no problem if Ukrainian professor comes to Crimea with a speech in the university. There is no problem from one side, but from other side we understand very well that this visit has some criminal consequences. Anyway, he will be asked. Anyway, he will need to comment his act. Anyway, his visit there will be used there as a fact of confirmed Ukrainian actions with this person. So when we look at this issue, we need to look at it more widely. And what can we see as legislation? We had common talks with Education Committee, with its head Lilia Grinevich, and we think that as soon as possible we need to make these distant education programs. We have many international projects at the moment working according to this model. There is special site where you can select any course of any university and just pass it. Today we are working on this project. There are working groups who work separately. There are changes in legislation field and in technical provision, how it's possible to do it. And I think this way would be optimum and required. And before that, we need to find some balance between the interests of the citizens and protection of the state.
Thank you. And let's end the press conference with a positive idea. We will have Christmas and New Year, and press conference is in the air, and there will be video on YouTube, and you can dress your relatives and friends and wish them what you want for them in 2016. It's a good opportunity, but I wasn't ready actually for this. So imagine that you have Jack Frost or a St. Nicholas. Next year and this year, Russians won't be able to travel where St. Nicholas was born, but the citizens of Ukraine can do this. They can go to Turkey. I think it's a good present for all citizens of Ukraine, for those citizens who feel their connection with Crimea, who reads us, listen to us, and will remember about you, and I hope that in the nearest future everything will be okay. I'm not feel comfortable in the role of Jack Frost, but still, I would ask everyone to assess themselves, because reform starts with ourselves. And Crimea is the heart of Ukraine, and if you have problems with your heart, the whole organism work incorrectly. So the treatment should be fast and effective, and I hope that God will see the situation in Ukraine and help us. And when God wants to punish someone, he deprives people of their mind. So I hope that in next year there will be hope in our hearts, and of course there should be a lucky star above Ukraine and Crimea. And I wish for all of us that the next year brings some hope and joy, and we should distinguish signals that are sent by God. And what if this didn't happen to Crimea, we would never understand how important Crimea for all of us. And when Ukraine was deprived of Crimea, we understood that we lost our hearts. So now we understand that we are a single organism. Ukraine should be united, and this understanding now in the hearts of Ukrainians. And I wish that my countrymen would feel what people in Ukraine feel, and we hope that Crimea should understand that it can't exist without Ukraine. And I wish everyone health, and thank you very much. And this is the end of our press conference. Till the next year, goodbye.